hate shopping for clothes. The lighting is always weird, the mirrors are too honest, and half the time I end up leaving with something that looked better on the hanger than on my body. But today I was actually feeling okay. Maybe it was the music playing overhead, or the fact that I was off work early for once. Or maybe it was the simple joy of having a quiet moment to myself. I stood in front of the mirror inside the fitting room, smoothing my palms over the fabric of a button-up I wasn't sure I could afford. The shirt hugged my frame just right, fitted, clean, dark green, and I turned slightly, eyeing the way it fell at my sides. Not bad. I took a step back, adjusting the collar, imagining what he would say when he saw me in it tonight. He always noticed the little things, new shirts, cologne, even if I just styled my hair differently. I smiled to myself, fingers playing with the last button. Then, without warning, the curtain was yanked open. I flinched hard, heart skipping as cold air rushed in. A man stood there, tall, late 30s maybe, dressed like he just walked out of a luxury catalog. Tailored pants, sleek leather shoes, a blazer sharp enough to cut glass. He didn't look startled. He didn't apologize. Instead, his eyes scanned me, slowly, neck to waist, waist to hips, and then he smirked. "Well," he said, cocking his head slightly, "didn't expect the view to be this good." My brain froze for half a second, trying to catch up. My shirt was halfway unbuttoned, and my jeans were unfastened at the top. I wasn't exactly exposed, but I felt naked, violated in a way that made my skin crawl. "What the hell?" I snapped, jerking the curtain back, covering myself. "This is a fitting room. I saw you come in," he said, completely unbothered. "Had to see for myself what you looked like up close." His voice was smooth, almost lazy, the kind that belonged to someone who'd never been told no in his life. "You can't just barge in on people," I said, chest tight. I grabbed for the shirt buttons as fast as I could, fumbling with trembling fingers. "Leave," but he didn't. He stood just beyond the curtain now, one hand holding it slightly open like he still had some claim to the space. His eyes didn't leave me. I tried to button the shirt with my back to him, but it felt pointless. He'd already seen enough. Then he said it. "I'll pay you," he said plainly, like he was offering a deal on a used car. "Just for one night." I blinked. "What?" I said, even though I'd heard him perfectly. "One night," he repeated. "Nothing serious, just some fun. No one has to know. Name your price." The world tilted slightly. "You're disgusting," I said, finally turning around. My voice shook, but my eyes didn't. "I'm not something you can buy." He shrugged, still smiling. "I've seen the way some guys look at me. Don't act like you haven't thought about it." "Wow," I breathed, almost laughing from the absurdity of it. "You're really that full of yourself?" He took a step closer, dropping the curtain behind him so that now we were just 2 feet apart in the cramped stall. "I get what I want," he said softly. "Always have." I reached behind me and grabbed the edge of the curtain again, holding it like a lifeline. "I'm with someone," I said. "Someone I love. I'm not interested, and I never will be." The smirk wavered, barely, but enough to notice. His gaze flickered, hardening. "Love," he said, as if the word offended him. "Cute." I yanked the curtain open and stepped out into the hallway of stalls, heart hammering, hoping anyone was nearby. But the place was quiet. It was mid-afternoon on a weekday. Barely any customers. He followed me out casually, brushing imaginary lint from his sleeve. "Calm down," he said smoothly. "You're overreacting. It was a joke." I turned around sharply. "That wasn't a joke. That was harassment." He put his hands up, smirk returning. All right, my bad. No need to get so worked up." But his eyes, they didn't match his apology. They were cold, calculating. There was a flicker of something there, something that made my stomach twist. "I should report you," I said, my voice quieter now but firm. He stepped back like he was done with the game. "Do what you want." And then, just before turning away, he leaned in slightly and added, "But if you think this is over, you're wrong." I stood frozen, watching him disappear between the racks of clothing like nothing had happened. Like I was the one being dramatic. I didn't try on anything else. I grabbed my bag, tossed the shirt on the return rack, and left the store without looking back. The sunlight outside felt harsh, like it didn't belong to the same world I just stepped out of. I walked quickly down the block, forcing deep breaths, counting my steps to calm myself. Was this what people meant when they said the world could flip in a moment? Because 5 minutes earlier, I was thinking about which shirt my boyfriend might like more. Now, I couldn't stop replaying that man's voice in my head, low, entitled, promising something I hadn't asked for. And that flicker in his eyes before he left told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't over. When I got home, the smell of garlic and butter hit me before I even closed the door. I stepped out of my shoes, dropped my bag gently by the console table, and walked toward the kitchen. He stood at the stove, one hand on a wooden spoon, the other resting on his hip, relaxed, focused, beautiful. His short dark hair was still slightly damp from a shower, and he wore one of my oversized t-shirts that hung a little loose around his shoulders. "Hey you," he said without turning. Perfect timing. Pasta's almost done. I smiled, even though my chest was still tight. "Smells amazing," I said softly, walking up behind him and wrapping my arms around his waist. He leaned back into me, still stirring the sauce. "Rough day?" he asked, sensing something. "Just crowded stores, bad lighting?" I deflected, nuzzling into the warmth of his neck. "You know how it is," he hummed, content to let it go for now. This he was my safe place. His name was Marcus, late 20s, maybe 3 years older than me. Calm in ways I never was, steady in ways I desperately needed. A police officer, though you'd never guess it unless you saw the badge or uniform. Off duty, he was quiet, gentle, the kind of man who made you feel safe without ever raising his voice. We'd met almost 2 years ago when my friend got pulled over for a busted taillight and I was in the passenger seat. Marcus was the officer who walked up to the window, professional, polite, and impossible to forget. A week later, he found me on Instagram. The rest, as they say, was inevitable. After dinner, we curled up on the couch. Plates still in the sink, the sound of rain tapping against the windows. His legs tangled with mine, his arm draped across my chest, thumb tracing lazy circles. "Still thinking about something?" he asked quietly. I hesitated. For a split second, I nearly said it, about the man at the store, the curtain being pulled open, the offer, the threat. But I looked at Marcus, the way his brow furrowed in concern, the softness in his eyes, and I couldn't do it. Not yet. He had enough to worry about every day on the job. He didn't need this on his mind too. "Nah," I lied. "Just tired." He didn't press. He never did. Instead, he pulled the throw blanket over us and kissed the side of my head. Our home wasn't fancy. A small apartment on the second floor of an older building, but it felt like ours. It smelled like fresh laundry and vanilla candles, with chipped mugs on the counter and post-it notes on the fridge. And Marcus? He did all the little things that mattered. Every morning, he made me coffee before I was even out of bed. When I had early meetings, he'd wake up just to wish me good luck. On nights when I came home late and frustrated, he'd already have dinner ready and music playing, jazz usually because he said it made my shoulders drop. And sometimes, when I got too inside my own head, he'd just hold me and say nothing until the storm passed. He never asked for anything in return. He just loved me, not the loud kind of love, not the fireworks or drama or grand gestures. His love was quiet, a hand on my lower back when we crossed the street, a gentle tug at my collar when it sat crooked, a note tucked into my lunch bag that simply read, "You've got this." There had been temptations over the years, of course. Moments when someone flirted a little too hard or lingered too long. We're human, after all. But I never strayed. Not even close. Because love isn't just about passion. It's about choice. And every day I chose Marcus. So when that man pulled the curtain back and looked at me like I was something for sale, it didn't just make me feel exposed. It made me feel dirty. Like that brief moment could undo everything real I had built with Marcus. And I hated that. The next morning I moved slower. got dressed in silence, sipping the coffee Marcus left on my nightstand like he always did. The warmth helped, but the heaviness inside me hadn't lifted. "You sure you're okay?" he asked again as he adjusted his duty belt in the mirror. I nodded, then walked up behind him, fixing the collar of his shirt. "You're always asking me that. Maybe I should be asking you." He smiled in the mirror. "Because I'm good at hiding it." "Well, don't," I said, letting my fingers linger on his shoulder. "Not from me." He turned, leaned down, and kissed me. Slow, tender, familiar. "Same goes for you," he murmured. "You don't have to carry things alone." I nodded again, but the words got stuck in my throat. Maybe tonight, I told myself. Maybe tonight I'd tell him. But I didn't want to see his face when I said it. Didn't want to watch it shift from concern to fury to the kind of cold, focused anger I'd only seen once before, when someone tried to hurt someone he loved. So I let it go. For now. That night, we made grilled cheese sandwiches and watched a bad horror movie. He fell asleep with his head in my lap, soft snores mixing with the TV static. I brushed my fingers through his hair and stared at the ceiling. He didn't know yet, but he would. And when he did, I had no doubt. He'd protect me. The question was, how far would he go? It started with a text. "Unknown number. You looked better without the shirt." Still thinking about that night. I stared at the screen, stomach flipping. My finger hovered over the screen as I tried to convince myself it wasn't him. Maybe a prank. Maybe someone texting the wrong number. But I knew. I didn't respond. Just locked my phone and shoved it into my pocket, hoping the universe would take the hint. Didn't. The next message came 2 hours later. "Unknown number. Want a reminder?" Attached was a video. I felt like I was floating as I tapped the screen. Numb. Detached. Terrified. The clip was short. Maybe 6 seconds. It started just as I was adjusting my waistband in the fitting room, the camera angled through the barely opened curtain. The lighting was low, but it was clear enough to see too much. Me vulnerable, half-naked, unaware. I shut the video off, heart pounding so loud it drowned everything else. I sat frozen in my desk chair at work, the screen now dark in my hand. For a second, the world stopped. Just me, my pulse, and the sick twist in my gut. Another message followed. "Unknown number. Meet me. Tonight. Hotel Grand. Room 511. You owe me something after the show you put on." That line, "You owe me," made my fingers clench so hard my knuckles cracked. I replied before I could second-guess myself. "Me. Delete the video. Don't contact me again." The reply was instant. "Unknown number. I will. After you give me what I want. Just one night. Then this all goes away." I didn't answer. I blocked the number. And for the next hour, I couldn't focus on a single thing. I sat at my desk, eyes burning from staring at a spreadsheet I wasn't actually reading, hands shaking every time my phone buzzed. Later that evening, a new message came in. New number. Unknown number. Blocking me? Not very smart. Do you really think that'll stop me? Attached was a screenshot, the same video uploaded to a private Dropbox folder. Underneath it, a single sentence. Easy to make this public. I felt like vomiting. For the next few days, I didn't sleep more than 2 or 3 hours at a time. I kept looking over my shoulder. Jumped every time I got a message, even from friends. I installed a second lock on our apartment door when Marcus was at work and didn't say why. I checked the peephole before opening the door. I turned off my phone at night, but that only made the anxiety worse. I couldn't tell Marcus. Not yet. He'd want names. He'd want details. And once he had them, he wouldn't rest. And if something went wrong, if the video got out before anything could be done, what would that do to us? To me, the violation was already crawling under my skin. The idea of it being shared, watched by strangers, turned into a joke or worse, I couldn't breathe thinking about it. Then came the next blow. Another message. Unknown number. Nice place on Crestwood Drive. Cute blue door. Wonder if your cop boyfriend knows how exposed your windows are at night. I dropped the phone like it burned me. He knew where I lived. My chest locked up, throat tightening until I had to sit down or risk collapsing. I stared at the phone on the floor. It didn't buzz again. It didn't have to. That one message had done enough damage. That night, I double-checked the window locks, closed all the blinds, left a light on in the kitchen. I nearly told Marcus. The words were right there, so close, but he was already worn thin from back-to-back night shifts. When he got home at 2 a.m., he kicked off his boots, kissed my forehead, and said, "Long day. Can't wait to just hold you." So I let him, and I held it all in. A few days later, it got worse. I was at work, sitting at my desk, trying desperately to pretend I could still function, when I felt someone behind me. I turned. He was standing there. Him. The man from the fitting room. In my office. Wearing a suit. Smiling. "Hey," he said smoothly. "Long time no see." My skin turned cold. "Oh my God," I whispered, barely audible. He held out his hand like we were old friends. "I'm Tyler," he said, loud enough for others to hear. "We met at that retail conference a while back. Remember?" I stared at him, frozen. He turned to my coworker across the aisle. "He helped me out with some analytics software. Smart guy." She smiled politely, oblivious. I forced a smile so tight my jaw ached. "Yeah, sure, that's right." He lingered. "Mind showing me to the break room? I need to fill out a visitor form or something." I nodded stiffly. My legs moved before my brain gave permission. We walked down the hallway, and the moment we were out of sight, I stopped. "What the hell are you doing here?" I hissed. "Relax," he said, slipping his hands into his pockets. "Just wanted to say hi. You've been ignoring my messages." "Because I told you to leave me alone," I snapped. "You're stalking me." He leaned in, voice dropping. "You really want to go there? You think anyone will believe the perfect little cop's boyfriend over me? I've got a video. You want the whole office to see what you were doing in that fitting room." "I wasn't doing anything," I hissed. He smiled, wicked. "The video doesn't care about context." I stepped back. "Leave. Now." He straightened his jacket. "You know where to find me when you stop playing hard to get." And just like that, he turned and walked away. Cool. Untouchable. I stood in the hallway, hands trembling, barely able to breathe. That was the moment I knew I couldn't handle this alone anymore. He wasn't just playing games. He was escalating. And if I didn't do something soon, I wasn't sure what would happen next. I hadn't planned to tell him that night. Marcus had just gotten off a brutal shift. A double, filled with back-to-back calls and a car crash involving a teenager. When he walked through the door, I could see it in the way he dropped his keys a little too hard, in the way his shoulders didn't quite relax, even after he kicked off his boots. I had dinner waiting, nothing fancy, just pasta and garlic bread. He smiled when he saw the table set, kissed me softly on the cheek, and said, "You always know." We ate in relative quiet. The TV murmured in the background. He talked a little about his day, about the crash, about a runaway kid they found hiding in a diner bathroom. I nodded in the right places, made the right noises. But my body was tight, my throat dry. I could barely swallow. I wasn't even tasting the food. I stared at his face across the table, the man who made me feel safe in every way that mattered. And I realized I couldn't keep lying to him. Not when I felt like I was disappearing under the weight of it all. After dinner, I started to clean up. He reached to help, but I stopped him. "Can we sit?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He raised an eyebrow, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "Sure." We sat on the couch. I curled my legs under me. He leaned back into the cushions with that same quiet awareness he always carried. I didn't know where to begin. My hands twisted in my lap. My chest ached. "Hey," he said gently, placing a hand over mine. "What's going on?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and the words tumbled out. I told him everything. From the moment in the fitting room, the curtain being pulled back, the offer, the refusal, to the video message. The screenshots, the threats, him showing up at my work, acting like we were old friends. The fear, the sleepless nights, the way I kept waiting to see my face. My body, posted online for the world to laugh at. I didn't look up the entire time. I just kept talking. My voice cracked more than once. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. When I finally finished, the silence between us felt like glass. Fragile, sharp, dangerous. Then I heard him exhale. Not loud, not sudden, but slow, controlled. When I looked up, his expression wasn't angry. Not in the way I expected. His eyes weren't wide. His fists weren't clenched. Instead, there was something calmer, colder, focused. He reached over, took my hand, and pulled me gently into his chest. "You're safe," he said. "He won't hurt you." I pressed my face into his shoulder, tears I hadn't meant to shed suddenly soaking into the fabric of his t-shirt. "I didn't know what to do," I whispered. "I was scared and ashamed. I thought you'd be mad that I didn't say anything earlier." "Mad?" he echoed. "No, not at you. Never at you." His voice was low, steady. But I could feel it, the storm brewing just beneath. The way his breathing slowed in that cop way he had, the kind of control that meant danger for someone else. "You should have told me sooner," he said after a moment, softer now. "But I get it. I really do. He made you feel trapped." I nodded, fingers clenching the fabric of his shirt. "What if he leaks the video before anything can be done?" He pulled back slightly, tilting my chin so I had to meet his eyes. "We'll do this the right way. He's made threats, sent explicit material without consent, stalked you at work. We've got more than enough." "But..." "No," he said firmly. "I know you're scared. I know this feels bigger than both of us. But I promise you he messed with the wrong person. You're not alone in this." His thumb brushed under my eye, catching a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. "I'm not just going to protect you because I love you," he said. "I'm going to protect you because what he did is wrong, illegal, predatory. And I don't care how much money he has or how confident he acts. I'm going to make sure he pays for it." I didn't respond. Couldn't. I just wrapped my arms around him tighter, letting the words sink into my bones. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. Later, we sat at the dining table with his laptop open, documenting every message I had received. Marcus guided me gently what to include, how to word it, what screenshots to save. His voice stayed calm, but his jaw stayed tight. When I hesitated before attaching the video file, he reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. "You are not what he tried to make you feel like," he said. "This doesn't define you. It's evidence. That's all." I nodded, biting the inside of my cheek. Once everything was compiled, he stood behind me, hands on my shoulders, and kissed the top of my head. "We'll take this to internal affairs first." Quietly, he said, "I trust a few people. We'll build it right. He won't see it coming." I turned in my chair and looked up at him. "Thank you," I said. He smiled, small, tired, but real. "There's nothing in this world I wouldn't do for you." That night, we lay in bed in silence, our legs tangled together, his hand resting on my side. And just before I drifted off, wrapped in the safety of his body, I heard him whisper, "I don't care how long it takes. I'll burn his whole world down before I let him hurt you again." Marcus didn't sleep much after I told him everything. Even though he tried to hide it, that calm, protective exterior never cracking, I could feel the shift in him. He started pacing more, drinking his coffee without tasting it, spending long stretches on his phone, quietly typing with focused eyes. He was building something, planning. And when he was ready, he sat me down and told me what we were going to do. "He's cocky," Marcus said, setting his mug down on the table. "That's what's going to undo him." I nodded, though my stomach was in knots. "He thinks I'm scared." "You are scared," Marcus said gently, "and he's using that. But we're going to use his ego against him." The plan was simple on the surface, terrifying in execution. I would text the stranger, pretending to have changed my mind. "Let's talk." A message he wouldn't be able to resist. We'd arrange a meeting at a public place, a rooftop bar downtown, private enough for a conversation, but secure enough for what needed to happen. Marcus would be nearby, wired in, with 2 plainclothes officers stationed nearby. I'd wear a wire, too. It felt like something out of a movie, except there was nothing fictional about the fear curling in my gut. The day of the meeting, I could barely eat. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every sound felt too loud. The buzz of my phone, the wind rattling the windows, even the quiet encouragement from Marcus as we prepped in our bedroom. He clipped the mic to the inside of my jacket collar and pressed the tiny wire gently to my chest. "I'll be right there," he said, looking me in the eye. "I promise." The second he says or does anything incriminating, we move in. Fast. I swallowed hard. What if he doesn't bring the phone? "He will," Marcus said. "Guys like him don't show up empty-handed. He'll want to flash it, wave his power around. That's the whole point for him. Control." I nodded. "And if he tries something before you get to me? You scream," he said, brushing his thumb across my jaw. "And I'll be there before your second breath." The rooftop bar was stylish and mostly empty, save for a few people sipping cocktails beneath heat lamps. It was just after sunset. Golden light washed the sky in warm streaks, and I could already see the familiar figure leaning against the railing, phone in hand, sunglasses perched cockily on his head. Even though the sun was all but gone, I took a breath and walked toward him. "Hey," I said, voice steadier than I expected. He turned, smile blooming like a wolf spotting a limping deer. "I was starting to think you ghosted me," he said, sliding his phone into his pocket. "Glad you came to your senses." I forced a smile. "I just want this to be over." "Smart," he said. "Let's grab a seat." We sat near the edge of the patio, a table tucked under a tall outdoor heater. I folded my hands on the table to keep from fidgeting. My heartbeat was a dull roar in my ears, but I remembered Marcus's words. Let him talk. Give him the rope. He leaned in slightly. "I knew you'd come around. Everyone does." I shrugged. "I didn't come here to argue. I just want to make it go away." He smirked, satisfied. "One night. That's all I've ever asked. And once we're done, the video disappears forever. You walk away clean. Simple." "What if I don't trust you?" I asked. He laughed. "You don't have much choice, sweetheart." I flinched at that. Not visibly, I hoped, but enough for him to notice. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. "You want proof I still have it?" he said casually. "I'll show you. Full resolution. Private copy." He tapped the screen, opened the video. I saw it play, muted but unmistakable. Me. The fitting room. Exposed. Vulnerable. I swallowed bile. "You're sick," I said quietly. He didn't even blink. "I'm successful, and I get what I want. That's not sick. That's power." Behind him, over his shoulder, I saw a figure shift, Marcus, moving into place at the edge of the patio. He gave the smallest nod. "Tell me something," I said, louder now. "How many others have you done this to?" He blinked. "Excuse me, is that your game?" I said. "Follow people. Violate them. Threaten them with videos and act like it's normal." His eyes narrowed. "You said you wanted this done quietly." I lied. In that moment, everything happened at once. Marcus stepped forward with another officer, both flashing badges. "Tyler Morgan," Marcus said firmly. "You're under arrest for blackmail, harassment, unlawful surveillance, and attempted extortion." "What the—" Tyler stammered, standing too quickly. The officer behind him grabbed his arms. "Don't move." Tyler whipped his head toward me. "You set me up?" "No," I said. "You set yourself up." His phone was seized. The video still playing. The audio wire recorded every word. The witnesses at the surrounding tables had heard just enough. It was airtight. As they cuffed him, he struggled. "This is entrapment. You tricked me." Marcus stepped in front of him, calm as ever. "You weren't tricked," he said. "You were given a chance to walk away, but your ego wouldn't let you. And now you'll answer for it." Tyler looked at me one last time, eyes wild. "This isn't over." Marcus turned to him, voice steel. "Yes, it is." I stood there, watching as they led him away. I didn't realize I was shaking until Marcus came to me, wrapping an arm around my back. "It's over," he said softly. I nodded, tears burning behind my eyes. I didn't think I could do it. You didn't have to do it alone, he said. Not ever. Back at home that night, we didn't say much. We sat on the couch, legs touching, hands tangled, the news still settling over us like dust after a storm. You were so calm, I said eventually. He looked over at me. I wasn't. But you looked. I was ready to break him in half the second he pulled that phone out, he said. But I had to wait. For you. For the case. For justice. I leaned into him. Thank you. He kissed the top of my head. It's not just about catching bad guys. It's about making sure people like you, the people I love, don't have to carry shame that was never theirs to begin with. I sat on a cold bench outside the police station, the sunrise just beginning to warm the sky with streaks of pale pink. My coffee had gone cold in my hands. I hadn't taken a sip. My fingers wrapped tightly around the cup anyway, like I needed something, anything, to hold on to. Through the station's wide windows, I could see Marcus standing in the processing area. His posture was firm, but I knew him well enough to see the tension in his jaw. He hadn't slept since the arrest. Tyler Morgan was inside, handcuffed and silent now. No cocky smirk, no arrogant eyes. Just a man whose world had finally snapped shut around him. I watched as officers cataloged his belongings, bagged his phone, the same one he'd used to record me, to blackmail me. Now it sat sealed in an evidence locker, locked away, just like he soon would be. Marcus came out a few minutes later, the door shutting heavily behind him. He walked over slowly, the weight of the last few days finally showing in his eyes. It's done, he said, voice low and steady. I exhaled, but the relief didn't come right away. Just the slow unclenching of something that had been wound tight inside my chest for far too long. What's happening to him? I asked. Marcus sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. He's being charged with multiple counts: illegal surveillance, criminal harassment, extortion, and distribution threats involving explicit material, he said. DA's confident. There's more than enough. Will he go to prison? Marcus nodded. Almost certainly. Maybe not for life, but he won't be bothering anyone for a long time. I looked down at the coffee in my hand. Part of me expected to feel triumphant, vindicated, maybe even powerful. But what I felt was anger. Not because justice wasn't happening, but because it almost didn't. Because it had taken all of this to be heard. Because for days, I had lived in fear. I had stopped sleeping, started checking behind me when I walked. I had imagined the worst over and over again, and it had all begun with a man opening a curtain without permission. And the only thing that had saved me was having the right person on my side. What if you weren't a cop? I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Marcus turned to me. What if I had no one to go to? What if I'd said yes out of fear? What if the video had leaked? What if he had followed someone else who couldn't fight back? He would have just kept doing it. Marcus nodded, his expression hard. That's why we document everything. That's why we build strong cases. But you're right. It shouldn't take this much for someone to be believed. I nodded, blinking away sudden tears. I felt so small, Marcus. Like I didn't exist. Like I was a thing. A target. He reached over and took the coffee from my hands, setting it on the bench beside us. Then he held my hands in his, warm and steady. You're not a target, he said. You're not a victim. You were stalked, harassed, violated. But you fought back. You spoke up. You didn't let him own your silence. I looked at him, and for the first time since the day it happened, I let myself cry. Not out of fear, but because I wasn't afraid anymore. That evening, we didn't talk much. We sat together on the balcony, a blanket draped across our legs, watching the lights flicker on in the buildings across the city. There was a stillness to the air, that kind of late-night quiet where the world feels like it's holding its breath. Marcus reached over and laced his fingers through mine. You know, he said after a while, we never really talked about boundaries. I turned to him. What do you mean? He shrugged. Not just about people like him. About us. About what we need to feel safe emotionally, physically. What we keep to ourselves, what we share, what silence means. I thought about that, about the way I'd kept it all bottled up for so long. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I didn't want to worry him. Because I thought protecting him meant carrying it alone. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner," I said. I didn't know how." He squeezed my hand. "We're still learning each other. That's okay. But I want us to learn how to walk through fear together, not around each other." "I do too," I said. He smiled softly. "Then we're already doing it." We sat there a little longer, the air cooling, the city humming below. I leaned my head on his shoulder and closed my eyes. For the first time in weeks, the silence didn't scare me. Felt like peace. The court verdict came in just over a month later. Guilty. On all counts. Unlawful surveillance. Criminal harassment. Attempted extortion. Distribution threats. Tyler Morgan, once too slick to be touched, was now awaiting sentencing. His smirk had faded weeks ago, replaced with a vacant stare during each court appearance. He never looked at me again, not even when the judge read the verdict aloud. I didn't attend every day of the trial. Marcus did, quietly, firmly, sitting just a few rows back, never once letting the prosecution feel alone in the room. I came for the testimony days, for the parts that involved me, and I said what needed to be said. With my head high, the day the verdict was announced, we didn't throw a party. There were no fireworks or champagne corks. Instead, we came home, to our little apartment, our warm kitchen, our quiet, shared life. And that night, we let the weight lift, just a little. Marcus insisted on cooking. "Tonight," he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "You don't lift a finger." He played soft jazz on the speaker, the kind he always puts on when he wants the evening to feel special without saying it out loud. He moved through the kitchen with the kind of confidence that only comes from knowing someone so well you don't have to ask what they like. I stood near the doorway, just watching him. The way he leaned slightly when he chopped garlic. The way his brow creased when he tasted the sauce. The way his foot tapped lightly to the rhythm without him noticing. "I could get used to this," I said, grinning. He glanced at me over his shoulder. "You better." Dinner was simple. Creamy pasta, roasted vegetables, fresh bread he'd picked up from the bakery down the street. We sat on the floor instead of the table, plates balanced on our laps, a blanket thrown over our knees. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, and it was safe. Afterward, we left the dishes in the sink. We moved into the living room, full and tired, content and quiet. Then Marcus held out his hand. "No music," he said. "Just us." I placed my hand in his and he pulled me close. We moved slowly, no rhythm, no steps. Just a soft sway, forehead against forehead. The kind of intimacy that made everything else disappear. "I'm proud of you," he whispered, "for standing up, for facing it." "I couldn't have done it without you," I said, eyes stinging. "Maybe," he murmured, brushing his thumb across my cheek. "But you didn't fold. You didn't disappear. You stayed you." We kept swaying in silence. No need for anything more. Later, curled up in bed, I stared at the ceiling and let my thoughts drift. So much had changed in just a few weeks. What started as an ordinary day in a clothing store had almost shattered everything. One moment, one man had tried to reduce me to a body, a transaction, a trophy to be bought and threatened and owned. But love, real love, had shattered him instead. I used to think love was about romance. The flowers, the candlelit dinners, the playful texts, the electric touches. But now I understood something deeper. Love is also what's left when the worst happens. It's the person who holds your shaking hands. The voice that tells you, you're still whole. When someone tries to break you. The shield that steps in front of the storm and says, you don't get to touch him. Not today. Not ever. Marcus didn't just protect me. He believed me. He saw me. Not just my body, not just what I looked like or what some awful man tried to make of me. But me, my fear, my anger, my strength. And he never once made me feel smaller for needing him. I rolled over and looked at him, his chest rising and falling in soft rhythm, one arm draped over the sheets where I'd been lying. I traced my fingers along his forearm, slowly, gently. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not just relief, not just gratitude, but peace. That quiet kind of peace that only comes when truly know, that someone loves you not for what they can take, but for everything you are when you're no longer trying to impress anyone. For your scars, for your silences, for your survival. I'm safe, I whispered into the darkness. And for the first time, I actually believed it. It was a friend of a friend who told me what happened next. Tyler's company had issued a statement days after the verdict. Something cold and calculated, filled with legal disclaimers and formal language. But the subtext was clear: he was done. Fired. Blacklisted. His name scrubbed from the company's website within hours. Word spread quickly through the social and business circles he once dominated. Investors pulled out. A speaking engagement in Los Angeles was canceled. The tech startup he once mentored publicly cut ties. And his friends, the ones who used to swarm him at every rooftop party and wine bar, vanished. No more likes on his curated Instagram posts. No more birthday toasts. No more networking dinners where he got to pretend he was untouchable. He wasn't just arrested. He was exposed. And no one wanted to be seen beside a man whose name was now associated with surveillance, blackmail, and coercion. When I heard all of it, I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. But I did feel something settle inside me, something right. Not because I wanted to ruin him, but because for the first time in weeks, I felt like the world had finally tilted back into balance. Justice, when it's real, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet, precise, inevitable. One evening, a few weeks later, Marcus and I sat on the porch of a little cabin we'd rented for the weekend. Just the two of us, far from the city, surrounded by tall pines and the hush of wind weaving through the branches. A warm mug of tea rested in my hands. Marcus's fingers were laced through mine, our shoulders touching, the scent of pinewood and night air wrapping around us like a blanket. Above us, the stars were scattered like diamonds, clear, endless, and silent. Neither of us spoke for a long while. It was the kind of silence I used to find terrifying. Now I found it beautiful. "I heard he moved out of the city," I said softly, watching a moth flutter near the porch light. Marcus nodded. "Makes sense. Cowards don't stay where people know the truth." I glanced at him. "Do you ever think I should have walked away instead of fighting?" He turned to face me fully, eyes calm and sure. "No. I think you did the hardest thing a person can do. You stood up. And you didn't let fear speak for you." I swallowed. "There were days I almost gave in. But you didn't." I looked back out at the stars. He thought he could buy my love, threaten my peace, and shame me. I paused, letting the weight of everything settle on that porch. The fear, the anger, the healing. But in the end, I continued. He taught me just how strong our love really is. Marcus squeezed my hand, silent agreement glowing in his eyes. And in that moment, with his hand in mine, the night wrapped around us like a promise. We didn't need to say anything else. I wasn't the same person I was in that fitting room. I was stronger now, and I wasn't alone. What would you have done in his place? If someone crossed the line like this, would you fight back, stay silent, or turn to someone you love for help? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful love and justice stories.